and welcome to Stories for Wonderful Children. I'm Dan Wendelin, your host and storyteller. Years ago, I began recording the bedtime stories I told my children every night. Now, I'd like to share those stories with you. I hope you enjoy my Stories for Wonderful Children. There's a little girl named Winella, and she lives in a very silent house, full of many silent rooms. The only thing that is not silent in Winella's house is Winella, because she has found and freed the music fairy Law, and Law has given her the ability to sing short songs. The songs that Winella sings in her omniharp are the only sounds that anyone can hear in all the world, because the misconductor has summoned the silence. And
silence?
The silence.
What's a silence?
Silence means quiet. No one can make any noise. And the music fairies, who govern all the sound and music and speech in all the world.
About chilling down the stream.
Diana, I can't tell the story if you're singing.
Breakfast balladines.
That's beautiful. Would you like to hear the story now?
Yeah.
Okay. Winella arrived back in her backyard on the Cat's Paw Highway. She had just arrived back from escaping the silence that was coming for her, and Law had helped her escape by singing a song at the last moment. When Ella dashed into her backyard, she knew that if she was going to defeat the misconductor and free the music fairies, that she would need the help of her friends. The first one that she thought of was May Sarah Figment. She ran down into the basement, past the pool, to the purple door. She flung the door open and stepped inside. May Sarah looked at her with eyebrows raised, and Winella opened her mouth and sang, "Oh, please, May Sarah, I have a wish. I wish to hear the thoughts of others." And May Sarah nodded her head and flung a claw full of wishing dust over Winella, and Winella could feel the sparkling dust settle over her. And at first she didn't feel anything, but then she felt sort of tingly and cold for a moment. And then, if she concentrated, she could just hear May Sarah's thoughts. Her thoughts were, "Can you hear me, Winella?" Winella nodded her head yes. May Sarah said, "Have you found out what's going on with all the missing noise in the world?" And Winella shook her head, nodded her head yes. And May Sarah said, "Well, I see that you have the omniharp there, and you must be on a quest that has something to do with the music fairies." And Winella nodded her head, and May Sarah thought, "Well, I wish you the very best of luck." Winella hopped back onto the Cat's Paw Highway out in the backyard. And
she said that she was going to need the help of her friends.
Well, she had the help of one of her friends. She had the help of May Sarah. Now she can hear thoughts of those around her. So she hopped on the Cat's Paw Highway. She laid her hand on the omniharp. And she thought, Law is free. Who shall I look for next?
Doe.
She looked at the first string and she thought, I should look for Doe. So she spun around 3 times and she sang, "Cat's Paw Highway, Cat's Paw Highway, Cat's Paw Highway, take me where I want to go." And she felt herself going very fast. And when she turned around, she could see that she must be back in Treble, because she could see that there were some bells growing on a nearby bush, and the tree that was right next to her, when she looked up in it, had some very large tubas growing up at the very top. And Winella sort of made a wide berth around that tree when she walked around it, because she didn't want to be underneath it if one of the tubas should get ripe and fall, because they were quite large, and she wouldn't want to be hit by one. It would just squish her. She walked through the forest, thinking, Doe. I wish I knew more about the music fairy named Doe. I don't know how I was supposed to find her. She thought, if only I could talk to Law for a moment. She looked down at the omniharp and thought, maybe I can talk to Law somehow using the omniharp. She plucked a string and the omniharp for Law. La. As the sound of the string echoed through the forest, she heard an answering note played on a guitar. La 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 la. And soon she saw Law flying through the forest towards her. And Winella, when she saw her, sang, La, I need to go find Doe. Do you know anything about Doe? And Law strummed her guitar and said, Doe is a music fairy. She is in charge of the music of the animals. And Winella could hear Law thinking about how Doe was in charge of all the bird songs and whale songs and dolphin chitters and the sound that the bats made so that they could tell where they were going. All those sounds that was all part of Doe's domain. She could also hear Law thinking about how Doe, as part of her fairy powers, could assume the shape of any animal. And Winella thought, oh no, how am I supposed to find her if she could look like anything? And she could hear Law thinking that Winella should use the omniharp in order to find Doe. So Winella looked down at the harp and thought, maybe I should try playing something on it. Let's see. Maybe I should try playing a song. Now, Winella didn't know many songs on her lap harp, but she did know a few. One of the ones that she had learned when she was taking her music lessons was how to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. So she played this. She played on the omniharp. Twinkle, twinkle, little Doe, how I wonder where you go. And even though she had stopped playing, the omniharp was still sort of humming. And then, as Winella held it in her hand, she felt it sort of tug on her. And so she walked in the direction that it was tugging. And as she started to walk in the direction, the omniharp tugged harder until soon she was running. She was running through the forest. It was strange to run through the forest and not be able to hear the sounds of her feet in the leaves. And she saw birds singing, but they made no sound. She saw deer, and quickly she came to a clearing. And there in the clearing was a gathering of animals. There were deer, there were dogs, there were ducks,
Were there tigers?
No, there were no tigers actually, but there were some cats and some bears and some wolves, all sorts of animals in the clearing. And it was strange. They were all sitting there quietly, looking straight at her as she walked into the clearing, as if they had known she was coming. And of course, maybe they heard the sound of the omniharp going, oh. And as she walked into the clearing, as she took her first step into the clearing, the sound of the omniharp stopped. And it was dead silent.
It was dead?
No, it wasn't dead. It was just silent. It was completely quiet. And Winella looked around at all the animals, and they looked back at her. And she thought, these animals aren't just sitting here for no reason. These animals must have something to do with Doe. She wished that she could hear the thoughts of animals, but it didn't work on animals. But then when she thought she could hear someone's thoughts. She could hear the thoughts of someone saying, I wonder who this is. I wonder why they have the omni-harp. Dare I hope that someone has come to save us from the silence? Or could it be that this is just another trick of the misconductor to try to find me when I'm hiding with my animals? And Winella thought to herself, Doe is here. She's here in this clearing somewhere. She's in the shape of an animal. How do I get her to reveal herself to me? She's hiding. And as she stood there for a moment, she thought, well, clearly the omni-harp alone isn't enough to make her trust me. She thought, how do I know which one is her? As she was standing there, she began to notice that it was getting darker. It seemed like the mist and the fog of the silence was getting thicker around the clearing. She began to worry. She began to think, I don't have much time. I have to find Doe, and I have to find her quickly. She closed her eyes and she listened to the thoughts of Doe. She listened to her thinking about, Doe was thinking about music and how much she missed it, about the sound of birds and how much she missed it. She was thinking about how she liked to chew on old bones, and she was thinking about how she liked to hear the sound of her own wings flapping. And Winella thought, like to chew on old bones? That doesn't sound like a fairy. What kind of animal likes to chew on old bones?
Dogs!
You're right. That's what she realized. She looked around the clearing and she saw that there was only one dog in the clearing. And it was really a very peculiar looking dog. It was completely white from the tip of its nose to the tip of its tail, except for its front left paw, which was black. Winella didn't hesitate. She walked up until she was sitting just in front of the dog, and then she knelt down. She took out the omni-harp, and she held it in front of the dog, and she looked at the string called Doe, and she plucked it, and the harp made this sound. Doe. And Winella reached out her hand, and she touched the dog gently on the head. She sang her little song. She sang, Doe, I'm here to help you, but the silence is coming. We must go. And under her hand she felt the fur of the dog grow warm and melt away. And instead of having her hand on a dog, she saw that her hand was resting gently on the head of a beautiful fairy, dressed all in the purest white, with wings that sparkled silver. And she was holding on her wrist, a songbird. And Doe looked at her and sang back to her. She sang, Thank you, Winella, thank you for freeing me. I was stuck in an animal form, and I could not use my fairy powers. You're right, the silence is coming. No, the silence is here. And Winella realized that the clearing was thick with fog now. And Doe looked at her and said, Quickly, you must use the omni-harp so we can escape. And Winella sang back, I don't know what to do. Help me. And Doe said, Play a song, play anything. And Winella reached down again and she played, Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. And as she plucked each note on the omniharp, the fog seemed to grow thinner as it sort of coiled away from them, trying to get away from the sound of the music. Winella and Doe took their chance, and they ran from the clearing through the forest. They ran as fast as they could, and soon they reached an area outside the forest where the fog wasn't as thick. Doe looked at her, and she said, "Have you come to help me and my sisters?" And Winella sang back to her. She sang, "Yes, law is free, and you are free." And Doe said, "Next you must free Ray. You will find her near a brook, the brook of dreams. That was her favorite place. I do not know what has happened to her." And Winella said, sang back to her, she sang, "Do you have anything that can help me?" And Doe said, "I don't know anything else. I'm sorry." And Winella said, "Well, go and do what you can to hold back the silence. I will go, I will go, I will go and free Ray." And then she looked down and she saw that Doe had taken her fairy wand, and on the back of Winella's hand she had drawn in fairy dust a map of Treble, and where everything was, where they were, where the Cat's Paw Highway was, and where the Brook of Dreams was. She saw that the Brook of Dreams was all the way on the other side of Treble, and she thought, "Oh, that will take me so long to get to. I need a faster way. I need Joey's help." And so she ran back to the Cat's Paw Highway, and she jumped up onto it, and she sang, "Cat's Paw Highway, Cat's Paw Highway, take me where I need to go." And she went very fast back to her own yard so that she could find Joey.
Joey didn't know where Treble was.
So that she could find Joey to take him back with her
No,
to Treble
I
the next day.
thought Joey didn't know where Treble was.
He doesn't. She's going to take him on the Cat's Paw Highway, and when they get there, he's going to help her fly to the Brook of Dreams. And we will hear that story tomorrow. Thanks for listening to Stories for Wonderful Children. Today's story was created and edited by me, Dan Wendelin. Commentary was supplied by my children. Intro and outro music composed by Brandon Thompson. If you enjoyed the story, please tell someone about it or leave a review on iTunes. If you'd like to, you can contact us by email at storiesforwonderfulchildren@gmail.com. I'll see you next time.